Good morning, everyone. I am on my way to school. I have a late start to the school year compared to a lot of colleagues. We're just now starting today. Kids come today, and it's year 20. And that is really bizarre to me because I don't know how many times in my career that I've crossed some kind of an annual threshold and decided, well, this is the one that officially makes me old. But there just aren't very many after this, but before retirement age. So I think it has to be this one. So I'm officially old. Year 20, and I'm excited about it. This has been just the week preparing for the school year has been really exciting because a lot of things that 20 years into the job would have normally started to feel very, I don't know, old hat or take for granted. Oh, I got to do this one more time. All those types of things. A lot of that feels new right now. Like it feels new and exciting because there's more normal that we haven't had in a while. I remember yesterday we ordered choir folders to pass out and to put in every choir slot so that the kids would have a choir folder when they get there. And that seems so like, who cares? But when those boxes came, I was like a kid, like it's Christmas time, and the kids, my chamber choir kids were there helping me unpack them and put them away. But we hadn't done that since before COVID because when COVID started, we were trying to minimize like shared touching items and different things like that, and so we just didn't order folders and made the kids go get their own folders, and which of course made no sense in terms of COVID transmission, but that was everybody was doing it, and so we did that. And so these are the types of things where you can pull a lot of excitement out of situations like this, where your whole routine has been disrupted, your whole world has been upended, and even though a lot of things might be going back to normal the way they were before, if your mindset is that of gratitude, appreciation, then those normal returns can be very exciting. And I'm feeling that right now because the kids are coming in today. So far, they've got a chance to have a retreat with the chamber choir, and they're just so hungry for the experiences. And as an educator, if I see my kids' eyes and their smiles, which is one of the things that was hard about masks, I get a lot of my payment, so to speak. We talk about teacher pay. Of course, we would all love that to be better. But the reality is you get paid in more than just dollars. And for years, my kids would pay me with their face. I get a lot of joy and energy and value out of the way kids feel about the instruction and the opportunities that I work so hard to provide for them in the class. And this weekend was just wonderful. I feel like my bank account of joy is running over, and that makes the job worth doing. Because honestly, if I had wanted a job that I work 50 hours a week instead of 37 or 36 or whatever it is that I work for a school, I would have done that instead. But I don't want that kind of job. I want the kind of job where I work less total time and get that extra payment in the form of meaning, in the form of making a difference in kids' lives, because that's a passion for me. Those types of things are so important, and the pandemic in a lot of ways kind of robbed that from me, that part of the joy of the job, mostly because I didn't get the same feedback from kids that I had before. And that's kind of how I know that I'm doing it. That's how I know that it's working. So July saw another month of unprecedented growth on the Patreon. Patreon.com/Coralosophy is a place where for as little as $3 a month, you can support the show. You can also get access to my Google folder of goodies. You can get access to full-length episodes. You can get access to behind the scenes episodes and so much more. So head on over there and subscribe today. The producer level sponsors at Patreon are Brannigan Lawrence, Chandler Smith, Venture Studios, John Warner, Ulrich Grain, Munoz Alarcon, Angie Schilling, David Kowalczyk, James Mock, Jared Hendricks, Jeff Wall, Kyle Peterson, Michael Herron, Nathan Hines, Ryan Main, and Stephen Kathy Kakachik. School is starting, or it's already started, so make sure you get your Sight Reading Factory memberships going. SightReadingFactory.com. Put Coralosophy at checkout. Once you've got your membership and all of your students' memberships in the checkout page, enter Coralosophy. It'll knock 10% off every time you use that code. And so I'm really excited for this year because we have that opportunity to start on day one with all the open lines of communication that you need when you are an educator. That's how you know. I used to say, trying to explain to people what teaching with masks was like, where there's one story that kind of sticks out in my mind where we were a month into the school year. Actually, I think it might have been 2 school years ago once kids finally came back physically in person, but we were still in masks, and we were going outside occasionally because we were allowed to take our masks off if we went outside. And I was working with a group of freshmen, and there were lots of kids in that group in that year, and many of you guys have probably had that experience when we did come back very shyly after online school and there were masks, and getting kids to sing was very difficult. And one of the things that I noticed was that I was not as able with masks on to tell in the way that I normally can. I can tell when a kid is struggling, oftentimes way before they're willing to raise their hand and say that they're struggling, simply because the facial expression changes. From here down, from the nose down, is just not enough information when that's covered up to know the difference between slightly confused, terrified, very confused, lost. Right, a lot of that shows on the face, and so one that was really crystal for me was we were working with a freshman group, and we went about a month of indoor masks. Okay, and I regret this looking back that we went that long, but then we went outside and we had a rehearsal outside where they could take their masks off. And I looked around and I saw a freshman girl really struggling through just to read the music and figure out where we were. So it wasn't like a decoding problem. It was just she was really struggling to figure out how to track the line itself. Okay, and I could tell that instantly and that was my old feeling of being a master teacher, because I've been doing this for a long, long time, and I could spot those kids. Before the pandemic, I could spot them on the first day of school, second day of school. I could eyeball who are the ones that I'm going to have to go help more often, right? And so we're a month into school. And I see this kid really, really struggling, whereas when the mask was on, I never noticed that it was a struggle issue and not an apathy issue or a just maybe just not giving 100% effort. But when the mask was off, I could see it instantly. And I didn't say anything. I just went over, and because the music is going on, and I just walked over and I reached over to the folder and I started pointing at where we were and tracing the line so that she could see exactly where we were. And when I got done helping her, I looked up into her eyes, and she was crying. And I said, I asked her what was wrong, and she said, I'm just, thank you for helping me. You've never helped me before. And I was like, oh my God, that was a knife to the gut. Because I started thinking, we had this conversation later. I got to know her better as the year went along, and I came back and followed up with her on this. And I explained to her, I was like, if we were in class with no masks on, I would have helped you on the first day of school. Like, I didn't know. I couldn't tell what was going on because I couldn't read your face. And she totally understood. But what was interesting about that experience is that it reminded me about how important our communication is with our kids. It's the old Eve Ely thing, and you go back to episode 50 because we have a really great conversation about this. Dr. Ely and I talk about the concept that he really preached when he was teaching full-time, which is that all kids want to do well, and if they're not doing well, it's because they don't know how. And that goes from reading music to singing beautifully to being a leader in the classroom to behavior issues, classroom management things. Kids, even your worst kid, air quotes worst, kid wants to do well. And if they're acting out, if they're acting like they're not trying very hard, all those types of things are defense mechanisms. Because if they could snap their fingers and all of a sudden be the star in your classroom, they would. Because they would love how that feels. That feels great. Everyone loves to be the teacher's pet or whatever. And so in that situation, it was just really crystal clear to me that this student wanted to do well. They wanted to do well, but they were drowning in the pool. And I wasn't able to see because they were giving, as most kids do, a very guarded view of their struggle, because most kids hide their struggle because they don't want to be seen as stupid. So with masks on, you'd have to be very confident in your struggle to show, I'm confused, raise your hand, say I'm confused, that kind of thing. Whereas when I can see your full face, you can't hide that from me. All it takes is me to notice a little like tension in the lips, a little bit of a furrowed brow with a certain mouth position says something different than a furrowed brow with a different, another mouth position. So I need to see that whole combination of tiny little subtle expressions to know, is this kid really trying but struggling, or does this kid just not care? Because those are two totally different facial expressions. Because the kid who doesn't care won't show stress. Right? They're just like, they don't care if they're getting it right or not. But this kid cared, and I couldn't tell. And that's tragic. And so I've learned a lesson from that too, and we actually went back into the classroom and we talked in that class later about, guys, well, as long as we have to wear masks, we have to promise to each other that we're going to be more verbal. And that goes for me too. I need to remind myself to tell you that you're doing well more often, because you're in normal school setting, I could just like stop the song and I could just smile. I could just tell, and that says it all. You know that I'm just really excited about that, and then we can move on. Like, way to go, you guys! But I can't do that anymore. I've got to verbalize it. I've got to verbalize any types of frustrations too, because you're going to misread my furrowed brow if that's all you see. And so I guess the point of this story for you as the listener is just to is for the gratitude of normal, the importance of communication, the importance of validating our students' efforts in a way that is not completely dependent upon outcome, but outcome matters. Right? We want to get them to the end goal, but we also have to understand that their struggle is extremely important, and we can't rob them of their struggle. We need to be there for them when they struggle. Okay, and because that is that safety net, so to speak, that eventually we get to take away, and that's kind of the ultimate joy of being the educator, is when we can send them out of the nest, so to speak. And hopefully, if you're teaching high school or definitely college, you'll get to that point where you can send them out of the nest before they've actually left you. And then the classroom becomes self-managing, and they're able to start rehearsing themselves, and they're able to start learning music on their own without your help. And that's not just a literacy thing. That is a confidence thing. That is the idea there is that it's more than just whether or not they know how to read it. It's whether or not they feel validated in their attempts at reading it. And I think that is a really important distinction, and I'll probably dive into that a little bit more. Are you looking for travel opportunities next year? You've got to be. It's a wonderful opportunity to sign up and go over to dciny.org and get scheduled and get on board with one of their many concert offerings. You want to work with Oli Yalo or Eric Whitaker, Bradley Ellingbo and Tony Silvestri have a program on for DCINY. It's a blockbuster season for them, and I'm sure you're going to want to be involved. They're wonderful to work with. Give them a shot. So what does it mean to validate them for their attempts to do the thing versus validating them for doing the thing? So here's how I think of this. One of the things that I've been trying to get across and preach, I guess, when I preach about instructional methods on this show, is that the way we present to our students how to deal with and how to interact with and how to form a relationship with failure and failed attempts is extremely important to whether or not eventually they get to the point where they can have successful attempts with consistency. Okay, so it's the idea of, and I'm going to say it this way too, we have to be careful that when we are validating the attempt, that we don't stop there, okay? That the students understand that it is really awesome that you tried something hard. It wasn't right. It wasn't right, but it is awesome that you tried something hard. And of course, I'm simplifying. In the classroom, this is different and it looks all kinds of different ways. But that's extremely important, because what we don't want is to give them a false sense of security and an elevated sense of ability. Because at some point, the world will pull that out from under them and they will be hit with the reality stick. Okay? So it is important that we teach them the lesson that they should want from their teachers: honesty. They should want brutal honesty. Okay? That being said, we need to help explain to them that what we are excited for them about in class and what we are trying to teach them isn't just the right answer. Okay, they can go to other classes if they want and try and focus on just getting the right answer in a blank on a quiz. That's not why they're in our class. Okay, they are in our class to get to the right answer eventually, but being a musician is different than a lot of other types of pursuits. So let me see if I can explain it this way. If I'm sitting in a chair at a desk with a piece of paper and some kind of a standardized test or pencil or something in front of me, surely, yes, I'm going to feel some type of an anxiety towards making an attempt at that test. Of course I will. However, even if it's timed, I have the ability to kind of budget my time when I'm taking that test as a student in such a way that I can take a deep breath at this one question I'm not sure about it. I can think about it for a second, and I can go back and reread. I can work through at my own pace. As musicians, we can't. We can't do that. We have to go at everyone else's pace. And if it's a conducted ensemble, it's the conductor's pace. Right? So we are naturally, when we are teaching students to learn to read music and learn to perform fluently music of any style, whether it's rote teaching, something read off the page, ultimately what we are trying to teach them to do is to do a form of literacy or a form of learning where they don't have any say at all over how quickly their neurons have to fire in order to be successful. Okay, so our focus is different, or should be anyway, to other disciplines. In other words, if I have that same standardized test and as a student, I turn it in, I can expect that if I did well and I studied and I'm pretty sure I got all the right answers, and maybe I'm even totally sure which answers I knew for sure and which answers I was guessing, and so I could walk out of that test and maybe feel pretty confident that I got a 97%. Okay? That's fine. But that same exact grade of 97% could have been given to one of my classmates who finished the test 20 minutes faster than I did. And that same 97% could have been given to another classmate who finished the test an hour after I did. Again, in music, it doesn't work that way. Why? The rehearsal's over. And we've gone home. So that same type of focus on correct just doesn't work. It doesn't work. Yet, at the same time, we want them to learn to be correct. So here's what I'm getting at here. In my thesis, and I have no way of proving this, but it is the anxiety of doing it now that gets in the way of a lot of kids' ability to read. In other words, if they were able to slow down, and if they were able to go at their own pace, they would be able to figure it out. But in the rehearsal setting, we can't allow them to do that. This is the importance of teaching them the value of just trying. Just try. If it was wrong, that's fine, but you got to try now. Like, go now. Sing something. Make a noise. Ah! Okay, make a noise. That's step one. You've ripped off the Band-Aid. The noise has been made. Okay? And then you are able to, if we're delivering this music education correctly, again, in my opinion, we are figuring out ways to have them learn that lesson, that their attempts within the rigid time frame of a rehearsal is exciting, important, and extremely valuable. That your contribution, even your mistakes, was extremely valuable. And I try to figure out ways to tell kids that. Okay, so even if a young lady, for example, just busts out the biggest, most beautiful wrong note, and sometimes this does happen, and then everyone looks at her, right? Ooh. And then she's like, really embarrassed. Then I try to figure out a way to connect with that kid and thank them. Because then they're usually confused why I'm thanking them. Because in their mind, they made a huge mistake, right? And that mistake got everyone's attention, eyes on them. But then I try to thank them, and I can't take away the embarrassment from them. I wish I could. I can't take it away. But I can at least try to redirect their idea of their relationship they have with the mistake that they made. And here's why I thank them. I thank them because I try to come up with some reason. It's usually don't have to work very hard to come up with a reason, but I could say, in your class today, we were really struggling as a group to get people to just be brave and make noises. And when you busted out that loud note, it was extremely important for the rest of the class to hear your vulnerability. Thank you for being the one to step forward. Because now I think it's going to be easier. Every day we come in, I think it's going to be easier to get everybody else to do that so that you're not the only one. Okay, so that reframes completely the conversation. Hopefully, again, not taking away the embarrassment, but hopefully that student is then able to see future mistakes in a similar way. And even more importantly, they're able to see the mistakes of their neighbors and their classmates and their choir mates in a similar way. Is that thank you for being willing to go for it. Should be the response to a lot of mistakes, especially in a student choir, and I would argue even in advanced level choirs of adults. Because I think it is the anxiety of the mistake that leads to so many problems that singers have. Because we don't sing through a disembodied instrument. We sing through our own soul, basically. And when we are feeling apprehensive at all, we sing less well. So all of this being said, and I think I don't have to explain this to people who listen on a regular basis, but if you're tuning in randomly for the first time, this might be important to point out. I'm obviously on the super big on the team of reading at a high level. Like, that's important, and I think that's critically important. More to come on that, I'm sure, on this show. However, it is my argument that you read better and more accurately by taking the pressure off of the individual mistake. And so and a reason I kind of riffed on this is I'm already, so now I'm 2 days in. You heard my thoughts in the car. I'm 2 days into the school year. This is going to come out within the first week of school for me, in year 20. And I feel like I'm seeing these things to be true in a way that, again, is so much easier than during either of the pandemic years of teaching. And I know that that's not revolutionary. In other words, yes, of course, it's easier when we're not online. And yes, of course, it's easier when we're not wearing masks. But the reason that I like it is that it's almost like a science experiment now. We've kind of gotten to see and test like what methods work in one type of learning environment and what methods really don't. And a lot of these types of things are more interpersonal and how we connect with each other to get kids confident enough to get to that right answer. So I know that this was kind of heady, and this Car Thoughts episode with my little addendum here at the end was very, I guess, more philosophical. But again, I don't want to apologize for having, it's got osophy right in the name, right? We know that that's going to happen sometimes on this show. And I think it's important just to think about why the way we interact with a student might work or not work. It's not just does it work, but why does it not work? And again, so I'll kind of summarize this, is that I think that when we have the ability to communicate with each other in all the tools that we have on our face, the twinkle in our eye, the smile at the corner of our lip that's not all the way a smile, right? All of the things that we have to communicate, we have this vast language that is nonverbal. And I think students, especially our young ones, or middle school, or elementary school, and even freshmen in high school, they are very sensitive to it. Very, very sensitive to it. I always say that teenagers have the best bullshit meter of anybody on the planet. At age 13 to 17 is like highly tuned bullshit meter. They can tell when you're not authentic, and they can tell when there is anything that they have done that puts them on the outs in any way. And that's going to increase the anxiety. So if the goal is high-level musicianship, high-level performance, high-level reading, the opposite of what you do is treat them like they're already high level. Because that's just going to clam them up. It's going to shut them down. They'll get there eventually when they feel free to completely turn their brain loose. I hope that helps, and I hope you can chew on that and think about it. And of course, as always, write in, ask questions, Go to Coralosophy.com. On the main page, you can put in a form for coming on the show or recommending a guest or a topic on the show. And of course, like, share, leave ratings in the Apple Podcast app. These are all very helpful things that you can do to keep this show moving forward with more ideas. And I'm getting my fall lineup ready right now for kind of back to school in the fall period with guests. So if you've got ideas about guests and topics you'd like me to talk about with guests, so maybe you know about an expert in a certain area that I don't know. I don't know about that person because I try to be out there looking for everybody, but I can't find everybody. So if you've got a person that you would love to hear me talk about on the show, then head over to Coralosophy.com and put that in the form, or you can go on Coralosopher's Facebook page. I just made a post this week about that, asking for ideas of who do you want me to talk to. You are part of this conversation as the audience as well. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.